Your concept of God changes as you change. Hi, I'm Michelle Fondin, and I'm the author of 12 published books, including the latest, The 8 Limbs of Yoga for Modern Times, a practical guide to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. You can find all of my 12 published books on Amazon. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Thank you for subscribing below. Click on the bell, scroll up to all for all notifications. And thank you for giving the video a thumbs up. I teach meditation, and if you are viewing this on Wednesday, June 4th of 2025, you can join my free info session. It's a webinar. It's completely free. Just to find out more about my meditation course, register at the link below. Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom, where I go over a spiritual topic and just discuss it. It's easy breezy. It's not terribly structured. It's more of a vlog style discussion of spiritual wisdom. I don't know where my pal Grogu went, but I have my Grogu tumbler here with my Ticino Dandelion Caramel Nut Tea. Here we go. This is the tea I always drink for my vlogs. In case you've viewed my vlogs, you know this. And in case you haven't viewed my vlogs, you don't know this. It's not a sponsor or anything. I just really like that tea. So yeah, I have Gudetama though. You can kind of see Hawaiian Gudetama right there. I've got Gudetama in the background. This is the anniversary Gudetama. Yeah, I came back from Hawaii and no Grogu. I think the cats must have gotten Grogu. So it's got to be around here somewhere. So let's talk about the concept of God and how your concept of God changes as you change. First, let's explore the why. Why am I talking about this and what use is it to you? I know a lot of people who are on the spiritual journey, who are in the midst of awakening. They're awakening to new spiritual truths. They're awakening to their higher spiritual self. They're going through a dark night of the soul. They're going through spiritual awakening symptoms, maybe a kundalini awakening, kundalini rising. And there is a tug, there's a pull, there's this feeling inside that I'm learning new spiritual truths. I'm feeling something new in regards to God, spirit, source. But I was taught something else. And so were they lying the whole time? Were they just misleading me? Is that what's going on? And it can leave a lot of turmoil inside of your heart because on the one hand, there may be this desire to stay in your current religion or religious practices or go to church, synagogue, the mosque, the temple, whatever. And on the other side, you're going through this spiritual awakening and you're starting to see things differently. So I'm going to discuss, and in fact, in the last video of spiritual wisdom, I talked about the difference between religion and spirituality, and I'll go ahead and put that link there. You can view that after this video. But I got this epiphany a few weeks back, and I've been wanting to talk about this with you guys. And that epiphany was, as you change, as you grow, develop spiritually, emotionally, as you gain more life wisdom, but really it's more on the spiritual level. As you change, your concept of God changes. And so it's not that the people that taught you about God in your past were completely wrong. It's just that their concept of God is only going to meet where they're at in their lives. I was brought up as a Catholic, later practicing Christianity in a non-denominational setting, but I have a lot of biblical studies under my belt. And a lot of people who study Christianity really get very up in arms about the Old Testament versus the New Testament, because there's a huge difference of God and the concept of God between the Old Testament and the New Testament. They're like, did God change? And in fact, God never changes. God is a constant. So at the very highest level, God is unconditional love. And how do we know this? We know this through the lens of experience, but we also know it through the teachings of Jesus, that God is unconditional love. And we know this through direct meditative experiences, for example. We know this because God is a creator, or whatever your self-concept of God is, but God is a creator, and you are a co-creator with God. So if God is a creator and God gives you free will choice to do what you will, that is unconditional love. It's like ever creating, ever growing, always creating. And the creations that God creates have a sense of liberty, freedom, free will to make the choices that they need to make while they are journeying here on earth. That is unconditional love. Throughout time, people have had various concepts of the divine. Now, the concepts of the divine may not have always been a monotheistic God or a one universal source divided among us, but nature, for example. So in ancient times, people's concept of God were plural in the sense of nature. So for example, if lightning were to strike, people thought that the gods were angry. Or if there was an eclipse, a solar eclipse, for example, in the middle of the day, that was a bad omen, that the gods were angry, and that would bring about death and destruction. Even in days of old, the concept of God was filtered through the belief systems of the people at the time. And you can see my friend Mocha in the background. That's my baby kitty cat that's just walking behind me. And that's probably the one that took away Grogu somehow. And so if you think about it, in ancient times, people feared God before the monotheistic God even came about in idea. People feared God or the gods because they looked at blessings being fertility and abundance and destruction and death and war and famine and desertic heat, for example, or when there was no rain, drought, that the gods were angry. And so their concept of God was reward versus punishment. Now, when we look back into the Old Testament, it looks very much like this, right? It looks like God is a punitive God, that if you don't sacrifice an animal for God, as an example, if you do not sacrifice an animal for God, then God will punish you. God will be angry. And this is really the concept of God as the stern father, as the father that loves only conditionally. If you do A, B, C, or D, then I will love you. But if you don't do A, B, C, or D, I do not love you. And then Jesus comes along in the New Testament, and Jesus says, no, God is love. God is peace. God is forgiving. As people change, their concept of God changes. But I am going to take this one step further. As you develop in your own sense of self-love, self-respect, and unconditional love for yourself, your concept of God evolves and changes. Since you are a piece of God, you are God incarnate in this flesh. And that does not go against Judeo-Christian beliefs. Because if God put a piece of him or her into you, into your soul, then you are a piece of God, right? You are God incarnate. So that does not go against your monotheistic religion. But as you learn to love yourself unconditionally, as you learn the expression of yourself in forgiveness, giving yourself grace, having gratitude for who you are in each and every day, for knowing your worthiness to receive, for releasing all self-doubt, for knowing that you are lovable and that you are loved, again, that you are deserving, that you are worthy. As you develop in these aspects of yourself through the lens, right, of unconditional love, learning to love yourself more and more and more and more, and have this space of unconditional love for yourself in all times, your concept of God changes immediately to unconditional love. It's like it aligns, right? It aligns with who you are. And the more you love yourself unconditionally, the more your deity, your God, the source is unconditionally loving because you are aligning with the true nature of God. The punitive God just does not make sense anymore. The God who is in charge of wrath and destruction doesn't make sense to you anymore. The God who says, if you don't do A, B, C, or D, you are condemned to hell, or you don't love me, or you are not my child, that doesn't make sense to you anymore. So it's not that the people that taught you religion or God concept in your past were lying to you. It's just that they only had that filter through which they saw God, and that mirrored the filter where they see themselves. And this is so true. And the reason also why this came to me is that I'm teaching a new course. It's called Read Tarot Like a Pro. Part of that new course that's upcoming on June 26th is following your intuition, being able to tune in to your intuitive gifts, being able to tune into yourself as a pure channel for angelic guidance, for spirit guidance, for divine guidance to come through. And the channel needs to be pure. And so if your self-concept is pure, then your channel can be pure. But if you're caught up in ego, if you're caught up in fear, anger, self-doubt, shame, blame, guilt, hatred, if you're filled with that, the messages that come through to you as a reader, as an example, in this example I'm giving, the messages that come through are going to get dirtied up by the unclear channel. But if your channel is completely clear, because your self-concept is that of unconditional love for yourself, that you've let go of self-doubt, shame, blame, guilt, that you've let go of unworthiness to receive, that you've let go of the undeservingness of love, you've let all that go, you've let in the light of God, who is unconditional love, where you see the pure essence of God through you, then you can give a much better intuitive reading or intuitive messages to the people around you, or in this case with my course, to your clients. And so it really came to me like, oh yeah, like your concept of God does change as you change. And as you love yourself more unconditionally, day by day by day, you see God as unconditional love. But if you hate yourself, if you are hating on yourself, if you are fearful that if you make one mistake, that you're a terrible person, you're a horrible person, that you should be punished, your concept of God is that of the punisher, right? That of the judge, that of the punisher, that of the condemner. Condemner? I don't even know if that's a word. Or he or she who condemns, I guess that's a better one. And if you are guilty, meaning you feel guilt all the time, then your concept of God is, I don't accept you, I don't love you, my love is conditional. So do you see how it very much mirrors how you are feeling about yourself and your self-concept, which makes absolute sense because God did not create you with conditions, meaning God did not create you and say, go prove your worthiness to receive. God did not create you with that in mind. Immediately, you were received into this earth with sustenance, or you would not be here, right? You immediately received air into your lungs when you were born. And so you were created to receive. You're created with worthiness to receive. God never created you with the intention that you had to deserve it. Prove it. You have to deserve it. And so as we change our concept, our self-concept, then we grow in our concept of God and we can accept that God is unconditional love. It doesn't matter what you were taught before. It doesn't matter what your parents told you, what your Sunday school told you, or what the Bible tells you even. Because as I spoke about in other videos on religion, on religious concepts, on spirituality, which I have a ton on my YouTube channel, but even the Bible stories had to be told through a human being because somebody had to write it down. And if the channel was clearer, right, then the stories really told a story that was more uplifting. But if the channels were dirty, meaning that person was riddled with guilt, shame, blame, self-blame, right, and fear, then the stories came out as more fearful. They came out as more guilt-ridden and shameful. And that's just the way it happens because that's what happens when the channel is dirty. So I would say it's not that it's lying, it's that the authors had divine messages, but they were being filtered through a lot of garbage, right? A lot of garbage, and their self-concept wasn't pure. So the messages were not pure of the highest light and love of God. I always say there's some truth, it's just not the entire truth. Truth is purity, truth is unconditional love. That's what truth is. So I hope this helps you to understand that you're not battling with yourself as you're moving through your spiritual awakening to understand the concept of God. You're more growing into yourself as a piece of God. And as you grow into yourself as a piece of God, you experience unconditional love more, and more. So I want to thank you so much for joining me here today. Thank you for subscribing to my channel below. Click on the bell, scroll up to all for all notifications. And thank you for giving the video a thumbs up. Thank you for sharing this video with others on the spiritual path. Thank you so much for your support of my YouTube channel. You can buy one of my 12 published books. You can join my meditation course. And if you're viewing this on Wednesday or Thursday, it's not too late to sign up for that Zoom webinar that happens at 5 p.m. Pacific time on June 5th. Thanks so much for joining, and I'll see you in the next video.